Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Franken Podcast. We got a great one today for a change. We're talking to Jason Kander. Jason, as you may remember, in 2016, ran for the U.S. Senate in Missouri and almost won in a state that Trump won by how many, Jason?
He won it by 19.
19.
For context, he won Mississippi by 18.
Very good context. And
I think so, too.
That's a great thing. And you lost by, what, 3?
2.8, but, who's counting?
So, in other words, you beat Hillary by 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, and I came in and did stuff for you.
You were very helpful.
You would have won if Comey hadn't done that thing. That's what I think.
I try not to think about it.
Oh, no, I want you to think about it constantly. Because that would be, wouldn't that be a PTSD symptom? Dwelling on something that you have no control over that happened to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, or and trying to exercise control over it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Brian Meyer is here. Brian is the founder of something we're going to be talking about today, the Veterans Community Project. And Brian, just to give a little background to you, you're a Marine, or were in the Marines, but once a Marine, always a Marine, right?
That is correct. I was in the Marine Corps.
Okay, so you're in the Marine Corps, and where was that? That Iraq?
Yeah, 2 deployments to Iraq. So I was in from 01 to 06 and deployed in 03 and 04.
Okay, and 03 and 04. So that's then during the thing. And Jason, you were in Afghanistan as an intelligence officer, right?
Mm-hmm, just one time.
Just one deployment. It was, how long was it? It was like 9 months or something?
Oh, shorter than that. I was there for 4 months.
4 months. And you would think that wouldn't be long enough to get traumatized.
I thought that for a long time, yeah.
That's what I thought about.
That's what you thought when you were fooling yourself, right?
Yeah, I thought that for almost 12 years. I was like, I did not, right. I was like, I did not earn this. So therefore it doesn't exist. And it's just
That's right.
Wrong.
So there's a little guilt in there. Why do I have PTSD when I was only there for 4 friggin' months?
Yeah.
I don't deserve it, right?
Right. It felt like stolen valor, which is like the worst term.
Stolen valor.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of autobiography names. Okay, we're going to talk about the Veterans Community Project, which is, I know organizations like the IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans America, a great organization. Mainly what they do is advocacy. What you guys do is provide services,
yeah,
which is very different. It's a very different thing. So it's like, housing, transitional housing, vouchers for permanent housing, I guess medical stuff. Is that, I'm in the right area?
You're right there. So really the main thing is the housing aspect, right? It's what most people know us by, is we're the guys who build tiny homes for homeless vets. But what you're alluding to is there's a whole lot more that goes into that. We kind of take the approach of a vet comes in and they have an issue, we're going to figure out how to fix that issue, whether it's a flat tire or access to VA services.
Oh, I think what's at the heart of it that is so exciting to me is that the word community is really an operative term in Veterans Community Project, because most of the time, a lot of people are interested in helping vets, but what they get an opportunity to do is like stand up at a ball game and applaud and that kind of thing. But this is like,
I really feel that I've done something when I do that.
Yeah, that's and don't get me wrong, you have, and we thank you for your service. But also, there's other stuff. Brian and I have joked around about making a T-shirt, for instance, that says like "You're welcome for my service," or like be more than thankful, because people want to do more for vets, and the truth is that like the VA doesn't have like boatloads of volunteer opportunities for people to come and really, like if you're a veterinarian, they're not like come in and help veterans with their dogs, but we have everything from veterinarians to dentists to everything else, because everybody has a specialty and something they can do for vets. And so that's what we provide the community an opportunity to do.
So this is a hands-on, this is something actually, one-on-one with veterans, helping veterans do stuff. IAVA, great organization. Paul Rykoff, a great guy. But what you're doing is you're there on the ground, and you're there one-to-one. And, you're talking about thank you for your service. Jason, I think I've told you this. When I used to do the USO tours, and then I would go to Walter Reed to visit wounded guys who were at Walter Reed. And I think it was the first time I went there. I would take a Polaroid with these guys. They want a picture, and if they knew who I was, and I would sign it saying thank you for your service. And like the third guy said to me, you know what? Thank you for your service. We really actually kind of don't like that, because it's just like some people say it like, thank you for your service. I mean, it does. It feels like it doesn't mean much, and it's just like a cliche. And I went, oh God, yeah, of course. So then I would take pictures with these guys, and I'd sign it, and I'd write, thank you for being grievously wounded. And they enjoyed that. They liked that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
They got that. And actually, when I went to Walter Reed the first time, I was so nervous because I was like, how am I going to cheer some guy up who's gotten his leg blown off or whatever? I was really nervous. I felt that I shouldn't be there. I wasn't entitled to be there or something. So I go there. The first guy I meet is a guy who's had his leg amputated, his right leg amputated, and he's on crutches and leaning against a wall. And I say, what happened to you? And he said, I came in here for a vasectomy. And what I learned was they cheered me up.
Yeah, man. Gallows humor. It's like,
oh, God, gallows humor is so misunderstood these days. These days, you got to be careful with any humor. Because you go like, thank you for being grievously injured.
Yeah, that would...
he was grievously injured.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that got me hanging around VCP, Veterans Community Project, is just it feeling like it did hanging around in the military again. Just like the way we are constantly all busting on each other about stuff that nobody else would ever be willing to make fun of. It's a staple of the military. Like when life is hard, you make fun of it because what else are you going to do about it?
Right. A morbid sense of humor is absolutely necessary in order to get through
life,
military service.
Oh, military
life.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's true too. But especially, in the military, some of the most horrible things people could say to each other, they say it with a smile, and it works out great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's a shared experience, which only you guys really have. I mean, really know about. Speaking of ignorant, I mean, okay, my first bill in the Senate, and it passed right away, was the dog bill, and it was basically what I saw when I met veterans with service dogs, and these are generally guys or women who had PTSD and were given a trained dog. That the dog did tremendous good for. I met a guy, Luis Montalvan. He at an IAVA event back in 2009, and he said I couldn't be at the event if it weren't for Tuesday. That was the name of this dog. And I said, what does Tuesday do for you? And he had been very isolated before he got Tuesday, and he got this invitation to go to this place and train with a dog, and he did it. And he had been isolating. He had been agoraphobic. He had been drinking to medicate his trauma, his PTSD, and he wouldn't go out. He got Tuesday. I said, what does Tuesday do? He said, well, he can anticipate my having a panic attack and prevent it. He pays attention to me. If I start breathing like too fast, he starts nuzzling me. And he's telling me, calm down. and I will, and I won't have the panic attack. And he also, if I have a debilitating nightmare, he'll jump on the bed and wake me up, so I don't have to go through that. And he'll even yank my sleeve and take me over to my medicine. And also, he broke my isolation. I was agoraphobic, and you have to take a dog out twice a day. And, people on the street, they don't really want to talk to a scruffy-looking wounded vet. He had been wounded and had terrible limp, but they do want to talk to a scruffy-looking wounded vet with a dog. And it really changed his life. He went to school. And so I was a champion of service dogs. So I put a bill together that would match 200 service dogs with 200 vets and do a 3-year study to see what the effect was. And I was pitching this on the floor, and a senator, I'll just say he was John Kyle from Arizona, and he says to me, "Are there enough vets with PTSD to justify 200 dogs?"
Yeah. Just like at work every day at VCP, there's like you could bring 200 dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, like Al, you know my story about my dog, which I've never told publicly, which is pretty funny, which is that right when I made my announcement that I had post-traumatic stress and was going to go get treatment, my wife and I were like, let's go get a dog. And what we should have got was exactly the dog you described, like Tuesday, wake you up from your nightmares, that kind of thing. But we hadn't received any treatment yet and didn't really know what was wrong with us. So we were still, we were hypervigilant. We were feeling like we were in danger all the time. So we got a protection dog. And so basically we got a dog with post-traumatic stress.
And you calm him down.
Yeah.
I've seen you rub up against him when he's starting to breathe heavy.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. It helps you feel like there's some purpose.
Yeah, I'm a service animal, is what it turns out.
Exactly. It's a service mammal.
Yeah, yes. Right, a service mammal. Diana says that we got Jason born. And so like Talia is like she does great now. She's a great family dog, who just happens to be very aware of noises. But she's like, we've had to train her to cuddle, and it's like at first it was like cuddling a crocodile.
It's so funny because you think of you as kind of a smart guy.
Yeah, well, I think of
Jason
me that
Kander.
way.
He's the first millennial to have a statewide office. He was Secretary of State. He's a smart guy. He gets exactly the wrong dog.
And now it's just like, well, this is the family dog.
That's okay. You can have a family dog that is not a trained service dog. But the training of service dogs is a big enterprise, a big deal. It's a 2-year deal, and some of them are trained by prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I've been to prisons where the prisoners who they trust to do this are given this project and learn how to train a service dog. And my God, it's great for the guy in prison or the woman. I've seen it in a women's prison. And sometimes when they get out, that's what they do. They train service dogs. So that's kind of a twofer. And sometimes they train these dogs for 2 years, and at the end they go like, nope, he's not a service dog. Or she's not a service dog. She'll be a therapy dog.
You didn't earn your vest, dog. Yeah.
So I actually have
dog's fault. They just weren't.
No, Al, it's the dog's fault.
Yeah.
Don't let the dog off the hook.
Yeah, they know what they're doing in there. I've seen them. I've seen them go, this, I don't want to work my whole life, so I'm just going to fail out of this.
Wow, I'm not buying in. I'll tell you that. Because all I see is I got to fucking love this, this slovenly, fucked up soldier or veteran. And No.
They're like, I heard about this.
They're like,
Yeah,
I'd rather
yeah.
stay in prison with a normalized population. I don't want to be with that weird vet.
VCP has retired service dogs walking all over the
Yeah.
place. Your dogs are.
Yeah, I have a retired service dog who was actually trained in a prison, upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really difficult to have a retired service dog when I didn't particularly need one. Not that he doesn't bring me any good, but, when my alarm goes off in the morning, I don't need the dog pulling off my covers and turning on the light because I am capable of hitting the snooze button. And breaking him of those habits were difficult.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So, and they can do that. It's weird. I've seen service dogs can pick coins off the floor. Like off a wood floor.
Really?
Yeah, and
What-
they
what
will.
do they-
Huh?
What do they do with them? Do they just put them in a piggy bank and save? What do they?
No, they don't do that. They give
Well,
it
what's
to
the function?
veteran. Veteran
Well,
drops a coin. Dog picks it up.
But why?
So,
Well,
Brian,
because
help.
you dropped the coin.
I get it. Like if you're, I was thinking about PTS, but like if you're physically wounded,
yes,
okay, that's.
it's not all about what you suffer from. Some people have other
I
disabilities.
beg
Yes,
to
yes.
differ.
I actually feel bad sometimes because I feel like inappropriate when like I have my service animal like get my remote that's just out of reach because I don't want to scoot over a little bit. Like, am I doing the whole system an injustice?
Well,
Hey,
there is
man.
a dog that's trained for just purely lazy people.
Yeah, that's.
And that's what he's been trained for. And so
Yeah.
when he goes like, okay, you want me to get the English muffin from the kitchen? Sure.
Hey, for his country, he does it for his country.
I would get Brian's story. I know Jason's story, but Brian, you were in Iraq.
That is correct.
How long were you there?
It's 2 deployments. So first one was the initial, right? So we're just hanging out in Kuwait, waiting for everything to jump off.
Mhm.
And that was a 7-month deployment. And then we went back just under a year later, I believe. And that was around 8 months.
So the first deployment was in Kuwait.
Yeah, it was a helicopter squadron. So
Mhm.
as soon as as soon as everything kicked off, we got in our helicopters and started pushing forward.
Were you in a forward operating base in Kuwait, like up near the?
Oh yeah, we were right next to the border there.
Mm-hmm. So you'd go in every once in a while or something to check out.
Before everything started, we used to actually just fly up and down the border. I mean, the border was literally just a big sand dune. And
It
you
was
could see
sandy
it.
there in Kuwait. I mean, it was just sandy. It's just exactly what you think it is like. I mean, Iraq had all kinds of different terrain, but that part of Kuwait, but they got oil.
Under
They
that
do.
sand, under that sand, there is oil.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people think that we went to war there for the oil.
Yeah.
Some people
Boy,
think that.
boy, are they off, fools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it's
It's
only
clear we were going
because
in.
Paul O'Neill said that before any 9/11, any of that at all, right at the beginning of the administration, people like Wolfowitz and Cheney, et cetera, went over a map of Iraq and identified where the oil was.
Yeah. And the truth is, we went there, I mean, because they attacked us.
Yes, at 9/11, that was the. And they
This is
had,
fun.
And they had weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, I forgot about that.
There it is. That's why we went.
Yeah.
There is
Like-
no question that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. That's my Cheney.
It's Cheney, right? Okay, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Christian Bale be proud.
Yeah, that was like, I thought
It's an
yeah.
easy friggin' thing to do. That's what I mean, he did a good job, but
I haven't seen it. I haven't
Oh,
seen it.
it's actually really good.
That's
I
what
was-
Diana said.
I was afraid that it'd be just too polemical and stuff like that. No, it was really good. And you know what? We all trash Trump constantly and for good reason. I mean, really. But he hasn't done that. He hasn't taken us into a war based on lies. And I think that one of the areas in which he knew Americans did not like those wars, the Iraq and Afghanistan, and didn't want to do that again. And I think that getting rid of Bolton was actually kind of a good idea. I think his whole administration is chaos. I think he's the worst human being to be president ever. But everyone's going like, oh, George W. Bush looks so great compared to this guy. And yes, as it's like a person to talk to or something like that, George W. Bush inherited a surplus, left with the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, went to war on false pretenses. As far as overall results, Bush, Trump hasn't gotten to anywhere near a Bush level. Yeah. But I don't think, how big a mistake would that be?
Oh, huge. Iran?
Yes.
You've had access to that kind of information more recently than me, but like, that's a big military. That's no joke. And the other thing that worries me about them is like the way their system is set up, their political leadership will actually, once that happens, like they won't be able to afford politically to lose or to surrender. So that could go on a long time and be really, really bad. Anyway, this is a sunny podcast so far.
Yeah, we started talking about dogs.
Tell us a little bit about how you started VCP, Veterans Community Project.
What I think is so unique about Veterans Community Project is because, like you, Al, I've been to a lot of nonprofits and toured them and that kind of thing. And when I first toured Veterans Community Project, it was on the campaign trail, and I was blown away by it. And I think what stood out to me about it was, it was a group of combat vets who had gone out and decided, hey, we think we can do this better. So they figured out where the gaps were and how to fill those gaps. They actually surveyed homeless veterans. And what was so different about it to me was it wasn't like, hey, we have this mission and we're going to do our best, which is laudable, and that's how most nonprofits work. It was more like a group of military guys going, yeah, this has to get done, so come hell or high water, we will accomplish the mission, because that's how they were trained. So with that, Brad, talk about how it started and what it does.
Myself, the other individuals started the organization. We're all from Kansas City. We're all vets, and we were all kind of working with the homeless population in different capacities. So, I'm an attorney by trade. And I was working, I'd started a different nonprofit that got veterans free legal services. And that's kind of how I connected with some of the other co-founders. And it's really what Jason kind of described, which is you look out there and you say, well, there are obvious gaps in services being provided to veterans. The biggest one being housing, lack of dignified, qualified, transitional housing. How do you take somebody from shelter to permanent housing? There's a gap. Huge.
Mm-hmm. The number one cure for homelessness, by the way, is a home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we say that I say it all the time. We know how to make a homeless person not homeless. The problem with giving them a home is that doesn't fix anything.
It does accomplish something. They got a home.
It does accomplish something. It just doesn't fix it. It
Right.
doesn't fix the root of it, right? Because, and it's just like you said, an individual is not going to worry about their mental health, addiction issues, all the kind of tangible things when they're worried about, am I safe? Where am I going to sleep? What am I going to eat? Are my lights going to be shut off on me? So we start with taking care of those issues, right? Hierarchy of needs. And we start with the most important ones. Here's a home. You're safe. Nothing bad will happen to you while you're here. Now let's start to work on the issues that got you in the homeless position. And then eventually let's get you ready to stand on your own and into some sort of permanent housing solution.
So like we have case managers who work with them, and instead of it being like 25, 30 to 1, case manager to client ratio or client to case manager ratio, it's 8 to 1, and they're right there. Like they can see the place where their client lives. They know where they are all the time. On top of that, it's like replicates base housing, which is a huge part of it. With the tiny houses, it's like they're in this community of people with a shared experience, which for many of them, that was the most recent time in their life when they were stable, is when they were in the military and in that sort of housing situation. So it recreates that, and then it puts them in a wraparound service situation. And the reason it's such a big gap is because the VA, through what are called HUD-VASH vouchers, which are basically vouchers for permanent housing for veterans, what they provide is a permanent housing solution for basically independent living. But there's no federal funding for straight up transitional housing with wraparound services, and furthermore, there's no federal funding for treatment of veterans that are outside the VA eligible population, like folks with other than honorable or dishonorable discharge, folks who didn't serve at the right time at the right place. So we say yes to all of those people.
Folks like Jason. That's what I like thinking about. So Imagine this scenario. Jason Kander walks into the VA, right? He's homeless. He needs a house. He wants to get a voucher or something like that. And they go to pull him up in the system, and there's no Jason Kander in the system. Therefore, he is ineligible at that time.
Why is there no Jason Kander in the system?
Well, because even though I had an honorable discharge, what I didn't have was there was a rule that if you didn't come in to the VA and enroll within 5 years of your combat deployment, then you had to basically prove up a case, right? So if you come in within the first 5 years, it's like no questions asked. We're going to treat you. You're enrolled. You're eligible for services. But if you're beyond 5 years, then you have to show all this documentation, go through all these hoops. It takes months in order to prove that you experienced any trauma and therefore should be eligible for mental health services. And so that's what I had to do. And actually, Veterans Community Project, Brian in particular, they're the ones who helped me do that. And it's really crazy when you think about it. It's just another rule with the VA that doesn't make any sense, because trauma is not something that gets better with age. I mean, the fact that it had been 12 years instead of 4.5 actually meant I was in a worse place, because it had gone. It's not wine, right? It's the opposite. It gets worse, and so there's so many rules like that that just don't make any sense. And what happens is, like, whether even for the folks who aren't homeless, who Veterans Community Project helps, there's over 6,000 vets, including me, in the Kansas City area for the KC location that have been helped. And you go in and it's a walk-in clinic where they say, hey, what is it you need? And they'll try and help you with things. And so there's all sorts of needs that veterans have that aren't being met, and that's where we step in.
No one knows what your private experience was, but what I think was so impactful about your statement was that I know you pretty well, and I would think, well, Jason has it together as much as anybody I know. He is functioning at a high level always, and when I read your statement, I went, holy moly, this is very brave, but I also think a service to say this. And also, you were running for mayor. You cared enough about yourself and your family to say, no, I'm going to stop doing that. You were just so functional. And maybe you were saying, like, I was doing that to get away from my own, PTSD or something like that. But you are an amazing performer.
Thanks.
And I want to play something, which is, and obviously this is sound, so you can't see this, but that's okay, because I want people to pay attention. This is your gun ad. This is the ad. Just basically tell people what the ad was.
Sure. So when I was running for the Senate in 2016, I had an F rating from the NRA, and so, of course, they were mentioning that a lot. And I wanted to make what I thought of as a muscular argument for gun control, for, in this case, background checks. And so we cut an ad where I was blindfolded, talking about my support for background checks and assembling AR-15 at the same time.
Sort of an iconic, everyone was amazed by this ad. Now, the reason I'm playing it just audio, because you'll know he's blindfolded. He's got a blindfold around him. You're in kind of some kind of warehouse or something, and you're putting the gun together, and you'll hear it. Now, what I want you to listen to, and this is why I say a great performer. He performs it, and you got to get this in under 30, and he performs it where every click, where something clicks in, is not over dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Did you consciously do that? Did you know you were doing that?
Yeah, that was the part that I had to practice the most, because actually the easiest part of the ad was, I knew how to
putting the gun together.
Yeah, I knew how to do that. I had never, and you won't see this because it's audio format, but I had never done it while standing part of the rifle up, but that was necessary for the visual, so I had to practice that part. But the rest of it I knew. But yeah, obviously there's no teleprompter because I'm blindfolded. And I knew because the ad guy had said, like, his idea was there'd be no music and that the soundtrack of the ad would be the sound of the rifle. And so, yeah, that was the part that I had to practice the most was saying the words in a way that wasn't just like saying them, but feeling them and doing it in between the sounds of the rifle.
Okay, and that's really impressive. As someone who has had to perform, this is has to be incredibly precise. So let's just play that and listen for this. Listen to how none of the clicks is on top of any of the monologue.
I'm Jason Kander, and Senator Blunt has been attacking me on guns. Well, in the Army, I learned how to use and respect my rifle. In Afghanistan, I'd volunteer to be an extra gun in a convoy of unarmored SUVs. And in the state legislature, I supported Second Amendment rights. I also believe in background checks so that terrorists can't get their hands on one of these. I approve this message because I'd like to see Senator Blunt do this.
Yeah, I point that out to people who are running for things, and I go like, you see, he's performing, and it's conscious, and he knows what he's doing. How about you do that?
I'd like to.
It means a lot coming from you, Al.
Well, I'd like to share something because
this is going to be a Marine.
No,
thing, right?
no, not at all. Because I knew Jason. We were in constant contact, and when I saw that ad and I saw him do it, the absolute only thing I could think about was I could do that so much faster.
I knew it. Yeah.
Like that was so slow. Like and oh my God, he was blindfolded, but he didn't have anybody yelling at him. It was a nice quiet room. Like, why is he getting so much credit for this? It made no sense to me.
But now you figured it out.
Now I got it.
Because now
the cadence.
It finally took to this moment where I explained that he had to time the clicks so they didn't interfere with your being able to understand what he's saying.
You know what's funny is on the campaign trail and ever since, vets will come up to me all the time, and first they'll be like, that ad was awesome. And then if they're Army or they're Marines, they'll do one of two things. Either they go, how come you didn't do the bolt assembly? And I'm like, I had 30 seconds, man. And then, or they'll say, because the thing at the end, where I open up the ejector, they hear the like, and they go, well, how come you didn't finish the functions check, which would mean to pull the trigger? And I'm like, because I didn't want to pull the trigger on TV. And they'll go, okay, cool. But so it's like every vet comes up, they're like, that was awesome. Now, let me sharpshoot you about it a little bit. Like, every time.
Yeah, and, fuck you. Isn't that the answer? Isn't that just the answer?
It's sort of like they do it with a smile. So then I'm like, fuck you with a smile.
I thought it was just more brave doing that on TV, knowing that, you knew that now every time you run into a vet, like, they're going to give you some crap about the gun assembly, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that's
everybody's got something to say now.
Yeah. But
and I've done this knowing that I'm going to get shit.
Yep, that's right. And it's, and nobody's like, you did it wrong. They're just like, I see you didn't finish it. And I'm like, yes, that it was television. So. Anyway, that means a lot coming from you on the performance bit of it. But to your larger point, yeah, I guess a lot of that decade plus of my life, whether I realized it or not, was, I don't want to say it was a full-on performance because I wasn't like hiding things from people because I was hiding.
The decade you're talking about is post. You've come back. And now you're running for office, and you're building your career, and you're making speeches, and then being a state representative, and then being the Secretary of State who runs the elections and all that stuff. You're doing all of that. That's the 10 years you're talking about was kind of a performative thing.
Yeah, and the reason I don't think of it that way is because I was deluding myself. So it's not like I don't want people, because I know I've had a lot of people who've supported me over all those years, and I don't want people to look back and think like I was somehow like
a fraud.
Yeah, or conning them. It's I was going through this inner turmoil that I was aware of, but I wasn't aware of why, and I wasn't aware that it was worthy of being treated or anything like that. So it just turned into a lot of shame and self-loathing and that kind of thing. And then I would sort of medicate by constantly being busy and working really, really hard at my career, which in this case was politics. And so it was the only real me that I had to offer. It was just that I was also deluding myself about whether something was wrong. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I think of it and look back on it.
No, I mean, I think that says a lot about how tricky all this is, because you are self-medicating with the achievements you're having and with reaching out to people and the response to you. All of that was sort of getting in the way of your facing this, right?
Yeah, and none of that medication was working, right? So it was like the more I would achieve, the worse I would feel, because I would be like, why am I not feeling better? Like at the time that I stepped back from public life and decided to go get treatment, my book had just become a New York Times bestseller. My podcast had been #1 in the country. I had decided, because of this stuff, not to run for president, but to run for mayor. We sold $25,000 worth of T-shirts on the first day in a mayoral campaign, and we had raised 3 times what the combined rest of the field had raised. And so it was like we were on our way to victory. Objectively, professionally, things could not have been better. Personally, it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And somebody said afterwards, I heard somebody say about it, it was like a professional clinician who they interviewed on the radio. He said, you deal with your trauma or your trauma deals with you. And that's where I had arrived at. I just had been running from it and avoiding it for so long that it was dealing with me. And it was like, just, I didn't have a choice. I had to deal with it.
Well, I think you made a difficult choice, because you did have this track that was clear that you would have won that race. And it's all a testament to how sort of talented you are as a public servant and as a candidate. And I remember when the book was coming out, and you had the same editor I had, the same publisher, and I kind of remember in anticipation of this, and the book is great. It's Outside the Wire, and it's a really great book about your experience there, and then also your life and the lessons that you draw from this. A terrific book that I would recommend. But I remember them being like, oh, if he runs for president, this book is going to just be huge. Because usually any of these campaign bios are like, daring to stand, the courage to dare,
charge to keep. That's my favorite one.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, Tim Pawlenty, his literally was called The Courage to Stand.
I didn't know that.
And you know, and he didn't like get, you know, he wasn't like paralyzed in a war, but then stood up. That was just it. It was just The Courage to Stand by Tim Pawlenty.
Yeah. I remember they were very nice about it when I was like, I've decided, like 2 weeks before the book came out, I was like, I've decided I'm going to run for mayor instead of president. And they were like, okay, all right. But they had to have been like, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, they were going like, okay, great.
I remember when
Fuck you!
Yeah.
You bought the book thinking you're running for president.
Yeah, maybe they felt like I conned them. That would be a group. I don't know. No, they've been.
No,
nice.
I think this comes off, Jason, as pretty sincere.
Yeah.
I think it does. I don't think everyone's going like, dick.
That's so funny.
He got that advance, and then he ran for mayor, and then he says he has PTSD. What bullshit?
When I found out that it hit the New York Times bestseller list, I called my agent, and I'm like, honestly, or I go, can you believe it? And she goes, honestly, I'm pretty shocked too.
Nice agent.
Well, she was just being honest, man. I mean, like, you know, it was, we were pretty pleased by it, but not like she thought the book was good, but obviously, like, I wasn't running for president, so.
No, but the book was great, and also your great TV presence. And Brian, are you on TV every once in a while? Because you sound like presentable on TV. You sound like you know what you're.
No, if you could see
Talking
me,
about-
you would understand why I'm never on TV.
No, you just have a giant head, but you're a good-looking fella.
I have a giant head and a huge hole in the side of my head. It's
No.
horrible to look at.
And
on
that's a
TV.
wound from. Is that?
No, I just fell down.
He just picks at it.
Yeah.
No, no.
We have to do a good amount of local TV. At least for me, I only really do local stuff.
Yeah, these guys built this thing up before I ever came around. Like, and you know, we all like to joke, but it's half joking that like I just swooped in and become the face of VCP after 3 years of them building it, and so these guys have done.
That's the
ton of
Veterans Community Project.
Right. Thank you.
Well, how can people donate to?
Well, thank you for
VCP.
asking.
Yeah, and now Jason comes in.
Yeah. People can go to veteranscommunityproject.org/donate, or they can make it easy. Just go to veteranscommunityproject.org and you'll find your way there. And I encourage people to do it, obviously, because we need to raise money. But for context, as I kind of alluded to earlier, because what we do and the population we serve is outside the traditional federal services for veterans, and because we fill in all these gaps, there aren't at this time federal funds or state funds for what we do, and so we rely entirely on private donations. So folks can go to veteranscommunityproject.org. They can make a donation. There's actually a pretty great store there. Folks like merchandise. There's great shirts there. We wear them every day, and that's another way to support us.
And then if you put /Al, I get a chunk.
I'll get right on that. I got a couple days before.
Yeah. No, thank you for your for your service, which again I know is hollow, but you guys weren't grievously wounded, except for your PTSD, which is people suffer with that. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing now, moving on to helping veterans who are having difficulties because they went to a theater of war for us to thank you guys for doing that for our country. And sometimes you can have disagreements about whether the operation was well thought through or in necessarily in our long-term best interest or whatever, but the guys who go and the women who go are putting everything on the line for us. And then some come back and have difficulty. And I think the least we can do is recognize that service and help. So VCP or veteranscommunityproject.org, right?
Right. And now I really appreciate it, man. And you know, I know we joke about like the thank you for your service thing, but like I think all your listeners know how much you've done for vets, both in the Senate and before that time. And but also I just really appreciate your friendship, man. So thank you.
Well, yeah. And I got to say, you came to one of the USO tours I was on at Camp Phoenix, right?
Yeah, it's the first time that I ever saw you. It was a very cold day in Kabul.
29 degrees, I think.
Yeah, and it was like it was one of my better days there, and I think also the case for most of the people who went to that show. So
it was very cold, and there weren't bleachers, there weren't seats for most people, most of the soldiers, and you guys stood. And we did a 4-hour show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good use of 4 hours for us.
Well, what we learned was the first year we went, we did a 2.5-hour show. We were going like, we wonder if this is too long. And we discovered it wasn't. And the next year we did a 3-hour show. And next year we did a 3.5-hour show. And next a 4-hour show, because what we learned is that any moment that wasn't terrifying or boring,
Right
which
on.
is sort of how you divide it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Was a good moment, and the music was great, and I thought the comedy was pretty good.
It was.
So thank me.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here today.
Thank you for your service, Al.
Yeah, you too, you guys. Yeah. It was nice of you to go there. Yeah. All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks.
Happy to help.
Thank
man.
you.
Thanks, Al.
Okay. Bye, guys.
All right,
Bye.
see ya.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening. That beautiful music is by Leo Kottke, the great Leo Kottke. I want to thank Peter Ogburn for producing this podcast. We'll talk again next week.